My name is Cooley McCoolson. This is Kittens McCoolson over to my side here. We are Kids Are Not Toys. I have been working with catchers for the last 2.5 years, something like that. Specifically the group Colorado Peb Patrol. I started out a couple of years ago, about the same time the captain did, and been kind of doing everything with them ever since. A little bit of OSINT work, some decoying in the early days, all that kind of stuff. And protecting children has always been a bit of a passion for me. And, my work with CPP really gave that a chance to come out. And so I've been doing that. And I actually met the lovely Kittens McCoolson through my work with CPP. She had kind of hunted me, I guess for a year, something like that, maybe, like rar. She would kind of leave me little emojis in chats and all that kind of stuff. But yeah.
I was flirting with him pretty hard. So
she was flirting with me pretty hard. So we met. The rest is history. We just thought we'd give you a little bit of a background on that. Cool. Kittens, I almost called you Cooley. Any thoughts on all that here?
Yeah. So I've been working kind of behind the scenes with CPP. That's like Cooley said, that's how we met. And one of the things that sort of drew me to the whole kind of catching community is the amount of passion and dedication that catchers have. And, that's kind of what caught my eye with Cooley, especially. So, and it turns out that it's something that I feel very passionately about, and which is why we started this whole thing. Like it's become frustrating to watch people getting caught for committing felonies and with absolute intent to sexually assault a child, and then have nothing happen, or like minimal sentences or minimal sort of punishments. And it's just hard to watch. It's hard to watch knowing that these people are getting away with this. And I think one of the only ways that we can really get the people and the powers that be to notice and to change their priorities and laws and such is if we get as many people as possible with us on this fight, who are willing to be vocal and who are willing to really put themselves out there to protect children. And we're hoping we can get you guys mad.
That's right. Get mad. So Kids Are Not Toys was kind of born out of that. Both of our desires to really want to help. What up, Bill? CPP Mama, great to see you. Both of our desires to really want to help the cause of protecting children. And, we've done most of the things you can do around CPP, and we got a lot of people helping, and Kittens and I thought it would be good to take a step back and really learn about what the problem is, what the problem's about, so that we can figure out how to focus and maximize our efforts to make an impact on the problem. And then we had the idea, well, if we're learning about this stuff, why not bring you guys along for the ride? So maybe we can figure out, the scope, what's going on with this problem, what the problem is even, and discover it together, discover how bad it is. Because myself, working with a catch team for 2 years, like I'll admit, like when I see an old guy on a phone in Costco or Walmart tippy tapping away, like I'm giving him the side eye. I'm like, who's that guy talking to? So is the problem that great? Is that being a little too much or what? That's kind of what we hope to find out here with you today. So today it's although it's episode 2, it's kind of episode 1. We're going to have to keep the scope pretty broad. We're not going to be able to dive too deep into all this stuff, but man, we found some staggering stuff, and researching this has been it's been difficult, I'll be honest, as has a lot of my work with CPP. And a lot of these stats and things we're finding out are quite shocking. What do you think? Have you been surprised by any of this stuff we've been looking into?
Well, I mean, I knew that it was something that was so prevalent and scary, but I don't think I realized how much of an impact it has on as many people as it does, like direct impact.
Right.
And then it's also kind of like throwing a pebble into a pond and watching the ripples. Like the effects of it, it touches everybody. Like even if you yourself, or even if your own child wasn't directly affected by sexual assault, the consequences of it have like a huge societal impact. And I think that's kind of
huge societal, and they ripple throughout someone's life. I mean, these are young people that we're talking about, and God willing, they've got another 70 years to live, and these ripples could continue, throughout their whole lives. So it's shocking stuff. It's horrifying stuff, but it's stuff that needs to be talked about.
Yeah. If we don't talk about it, then it just, kind of gets swept under the rug, and complacency is not an option.
Not an option. So today's episode is about why we fight. As we said, it's been really on our radars to protect kids. I myself was affected by CSA as a child, and this has affected me throughout my whole life. It took till I was, I think, 47 years old till I told another adult, or till I told anybody about it. And as we'll find out in this episode, I was actually a little earlier than most people as far as when they first tell, at 47 years old. So that's pretty wild. So let's get this kicked off. What we're going to be talking about today is child sexual abuse. A lot of different organizations such as RAIN, NCMEC, you may have heard of those two organizations. They call it CSA for child sexual assault. The CSA is a form of child abuse that includes sexual activity with a minor. A child, as we know, cannot consent to any form of sexual activity. It does not need to include physical contact. So that's what we're going to talk about. Another thing that's going to come up that you may not be familiar with is the term CSAM, which is child sexual assault material. A lot of the laws and lawmakers call CSAM child CP or child porn. That's what is in a lot of the laws, but a lot of the organizations that are working on educating on these things, they've been taken to call it CSAM.
Which I think is good.
Yeah. You want to explain
because
why
words do matter? Yeah. So when you say like child porn, children can't consent. So porn is, pornography is considered to be with two consenting adults, whereas CSAM is just like what it says, child sexual assault material. So you're essentially watching a child be assaulted over and over and over again. And I think that it's important that people really recognize that fact, that it's not just images. It's not, just video. It is a child who's being sexually assaulted, and it's just continuously, every time someone watches it, it makes a difference. It's like being re-assaulted is what we found in some of our research on people who were affected directly by that.
Yeah, and that's the concern, is that like porn, it doesn't really give the gravity to the situation. What you're looking at, if you were to see it, or if someone were, like, is is a photographic or a video record of perhaps the most horrific point in a human's life. And it's a record that's freely traded online. It goes around, and it leaves the victims wondering, does this person that I'm seeing on the bus that's looking at me, have they seen me before? Like it's really bad stuff. And that's why we're trying to use the term CSAM just to underline, how bad and horrible that is. We do have some dogs joining us in the studio. You might hear a little barking or snoring. That's not me. I didn't fall asleep. We got a dog or two. So those are kind of the terms that maybe not everyone's familiar with, but we'll be talking a bit about today. With that, in our research, we found that 1 out of 10 children experience CSA nationally, so child sexual abuse. What were your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I mean, if you think about it in your life, you probably know at least 10 kids. And with those stats, one thing to keep in mind is that knowing those 10 children, at least one of them will be, has been, or is currently a victim of child sexual assault. I mean, according to the stats, I'm not saying that's a definite thing, but.
Yeah, and this stat, I think they took it from about 2016. At that point, there was 27 million kids under the age of 18 in the U.S. I think it's closer to 32 million now, but that's 3.2 million children we're talking about that are potentially victims.
Yeah,
that's a staggering number, like 3.2 million.
Terrifying number. It's a terrifying number. And another stat that we found is that every 9 minutes, CPS substantiates or finds evidence for a claim of CSA. And that sounds like an awful lot, but also keep in mind that that's CPS substantiating claims. So there's a lot of information and a lot of assaults that are never reported in the first place. And possibly CPS not investigating them. So I would say that number is probably a lot smaller as far as minutes go.
That's true. And for the year that was taken, that worked out to be about 57,000 children that they did look into that for. Another thing about these stats is they're terrifically hard to pin down. The United States government hasn't done a lot these in recent years, so a lot of it's coming from research papers and all that kind of stuff. So sometimes the numbers don't exactly add up, but these are the best that we could get our heads around with this issue. So along with that, let's see, one of the big things that we have worked with as catchers is technology and how technology has changed the landscape. It certainly changes the access that people have with children. What up, Matt C? Oop. Getting drawn into chat down there. But it changes the landscape incredibly, I think. And I think that, research, the laws are still just struggling to keep up with that. One of the big groups that we have that's helping keep our kids safe is NCMEC, which is the National Center for Missing and Endangered Children.
Exploited
children. let's see. So they have lots of things that they're doing, including monitoring online for pictures and taking reports for law enforcement about missing, exploited children, child exploitation, all that kind of stuff. In 2022, NCMEC received 80,500 reports of online enticement of children for sexual acts. So 80,000 reports of online enticement, and that's the exact thing that a lot of our catchers are kind of working with, that type of thing. Most of the catchers that I'm aware of use online apps as decoys, to do their catching, and that's kind of folds right in with what it is. So they had received 80,500 reports. The interesting thing about that stat is in 2021, they received about 42,000. So it increased 82% year over year from 2021 to 2022 of reports of enticement of children. Yep.
Yeah. And, it makes you wonder, like, why that is, if it's changes in technology, or the way they monitor, or in the way that it's reported too. So I feel like it's a lot of variables as to why it would increase. And then maybe it's just more prevalent, period.
Yeah,
just
that's right, Krasinski.
that.
That's only the reported numbers. And and we'll find out too that that a lot of the children that have been assaulted, or most actually, from what the research says, are never reported. Let's see. As far as working with the catch team goes, as I said, we're using apps with decoys to set up meets with these guys who are trying to meet children. So NCMEC has released another stat that says that approximately 2 out of every 5 youths who engage in an intimate online relationship with an adult stranger met the adult in person.
And then every 2 out of 3 victims reported physical sexual intercourse. So that is the majority of them.
That would be a solid majority. But that's a sobering thought, especially someone, I've worked with CPP for a couple of years, and just to think about that, like, that's why it became so important for me when I was decoying, to get as many decoys as I could, or talk to as many people as I could. When I was doing the OSINT, we got to find as many of these guys as we can. But let that sink in. 2 out of 5 youths who engage in an intimate online relationship with an adult stranger met the adult in person. 2 out of 5. If that's the case, like, what does that mean for our decoys? Are they truly angels? like they're really, I see a direct line between them putting their mental health on the line to children not getting met. If 2 out of those 5 would have actually met. Kittens, what did you think?
And the predators that are online, they're not just talking to one child. They're going to be talking to they're going to be looking for minors. They're going to be looking for the ones that they can groom, and that they can, hopefully take advantage of. So
they absolutely are. And a lot of these creeps, in my experience, I'm sure Shay could attest to this, but when they're talking to one of our decoys, a lot of them are talking to all of our decoys, or they're talking to our decoys on different accounts. Sugar Bean says, does that change the way that decoys interact? Well, it certainly did with me, Sugar Bean. Like, yeah, I wanted to get as many of them as I could. Now, to be clear, my decoy career was pretty short. I learned, it wasn't for me, and there was probably better ways that I could help out. But that is just wild. 2 out of 5 youths who engage in an intimate online relationship with an adult stranger met the adult in person. The study that came from was actually a smaller study. Is a smaller sample size, so we don't know how well that scales. But it was on a research paper, basically done surveying victims that have met people online.
Now,
Hey,
to top
Judd,
that
good to see you.
off, to top that one off, another study was saying that 1 in 4 minors experience online sexual grooming via long, intimate conversations in online chat rooms. So that's 1 in 4 of all minors will experience some form of sexual grooming.
Yeah.
And from that, then 2 out of 5 youths will meet the stranger. Will meet the adult.
It's starting to paint a horrifying picture, isn't it? So
Terrifying.
out of all the kids out there, 1 in 4 experience online sexual grooming via a long, intimate conversation. Of those 1 in 4, 2 of 5 of that 1 in 4. Now, I'm not great at math, but someone could math that
hard.
2 in 5 of those, of that 25% of children, they could meet with one of these guys. And this is why we were hoping to do this. We're beside ourselves with this shit, and have been for a couple of years in my case. And I'm mad. I'm upset about this. This is not the way it should be. Something is wrong. Something's broken here with society, with everything. And we're just hoping to get a dialogue going about, what we can do to help, what you can do to help. If maybe you're out there decoying one of these guys, maybe that kid who's one of the 2 in 5 isn't going to show up and meet with them, right?
Yeah, and hopefully, changing the way that our system sees these kind of predators and making children a priority once more. Like maybe we can get those numbers down considerably smaller. And I mean, it's a lifetime sentence for children who have been assaulted. It's a lifetime sentence. You carry it with you forever. And that's a lot of kids that are going to be having to carry this with them and let it affect their lives on every level. And as a society, I mean, it impacts our productivity as a society when you have people who are dealing with this and struggling with the things that come from being assaulted, the mental health issues, the drug addiction issues, depression, anxiety. Like it impacts the entire society when people are having to fight through that stuff just to live a normal life. Yeah. So if we can do something to change it, let's do it.
It's a heck of a thing to saddle someone with. For whatever reason these people would assault children. It makes no sense. Judd SC says, what are things us viewers can do to help? Kids are not toys. And we hope to have that information for you. We want to get you a little more mad about this first, but we will talk about some things you can do. We have mentioned decoying already. That's a pretty good parallel with what we were talking about, so I mentioned that. But we do have a lot of teams that need your help. There's a lot of organizations that need your help. And we'll get into that towards the end of the show.
Yeah, and just because we're both affiliated with CPP, any catcher out there is doing, and decoy is doing the work that needs to be done. So, supporting
Absolutely.
any and all, and just, even if it's just liking, sharing,
Yeah, that goes with catchers and anyone who's working to solve the problem, because this is horrible. how could we let this happen to our children? Viewed through this lens, it's difficult for me to to say a bad thing about a catcher. Well, maybe I don't like their style or watching them, but like, look at the good they're doing. I support anyone who's out here putting in the work. I think it's an amazing thing.
And Vicky Mimia 4, she makes a good point too, like politically, and we'll get more into that too. Politically, there's ways to make your voices heard, and there's people who are going to be more inclined to listen than others. And starting small is not a bad thing. Like starting locally.
Yep,
and just
that's what we're doing
with people.
We're starting a small channel. We decided we need to learn about this. We need to get our arms around this so we can figure out the best way for ourselves to work with this problem. And we're just inviting you to join us to learn about it together. And once we do, we're going to figure out what to do. Maybe we'll have some better answers about that. So that's some info that we have on CSA, child sexual abuse. Some of it was related, to online things. That's a really big way that this issue is kind of blowing up. I agree, WV. Locally is generally where you can do the most. We're also going to talk about CSAM, as we said in the past, and by lawmakers, it's generally known as child porn. But words matter, so we're going to address it as child sexual assault material.
Yep. Yeah, it'd be best if the whole general public could see it that way instead of CP.
Yep, and we're new to that too. Do you want to kick this one off, Gideon?
Sure. Well, child sexual abuse material, CSAM, is a documentation of horrific sexual abuse of children. There's more than 32 million reports of suspected CSAM to NCMEC in 2022.
Yep. So 32 million reports of suspected CSAM. They were reported. This was 2022. So those numbers are pretty fresh. But that's a lot, right? Like, that's not a small amount. That's about 615,000 reports a week that they're getting. Luckily, they have automated systems in place. We're going to talk about that a little bit. But that's a staggering amount, 32 million reports. Along with that 32 million, 88 million files were reported. So there were multiple examples of CSAM within each of those, well, not each of those reports, but in a lot of those reports.
And behind every file is a real child.
That's the important thing to keep in mind. It's not 88 million files. I mean, it is, granted, but what you're looking at is 88 million files that are recording and documenting perhaps the most traumatic event in a human being's life that'll be following around for the rest of their lives. So that's pretty sobering. The good news is with NCMEC, there's 88 million files reported in 2022. What they've been doing is they've been automating a lot of this stuff. NCMEC is certainly another place you could help out. They do offer paid positions. There's a bunch that are available throughout the country right now, mostly in Washington, D.C., and I think Vermont. If you're interested in helping out, lending a hand with them.
I hear they have good maple syrup there.
Vermont is indeed famous for maple syrup. So what NCMEC does, obviously with 88 million files, you're not going to be able to get through all of them. So most of the reports that they take of those 88 million come from online providers. So maybe not service provider, not like your ISP like Comcast. I mean, although, they do report, I think, but all kinds of providers. So texting providers, picture providers, Google providers, all that stuff. And NCMEC has created tools to identify these pictures without even someone needing to view the files. So what they do is they find a piece of CSAM, they run it through a program, and that file, the individual picture of potentially the most horrific event in a human being's life, is assigned a digital fingerprint. They call it a hash. So with this hash value, they store a list of these hash values and give them out to as many internet providers that will accept them and report to them on them. And the ones that do, such as Google, such as texting, places, whatever, the ones that do report back to them, just all they do is simply run everything that they get as far as a picture or a video through, looking for these hash files, and they're done automatically, and it's automatically reported to NCMEC and the police, which is really good because of the amount of this crap that's all over the internet. So that's kind of how their volunteering scanning works. They are branching out into AI as far as tagging new images, so they don't have to go through by hand to get all these things. But NCMEC is doing a lot of good. Can you guys hear the puppy dog?
He's snoring.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So yeah, they're really crushing it. In 2022, NCMEC added an additional 1.1 million hash files into their database that they look at. And so currently their database, the newest numbers they have is they have about 6.3 million hashes of known CSAM pictures, videos, all that stuff that's automatically reported. So that's an important tool in the fight. I'm not sure if I mentioned that 99% of all the reports that NCMEC gets is from online providers. So most of them would be your bigger ones, Google, all that stuff just automatically goes over to them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're getting pretty good at identifying and narrowing down people who have CSAM on their computers and devices. Yeah, and they're advancing every day with it too, creating new ways to find it. And unfortunately, the people who are making it and distributing it, they're finding ways to advance as well. So it's a constant struggle. Yeah,
you're absolutely right. Another group that we're going to mention later on, where you can find information for parents and that kind of thing, is actually called Thorn. And Thorn is the one that's working on this new AI tool to automatically get these new images, new videos into the databases to be turned over to the authorities. So Thorn is pretty awesome too.
Yeah. And again, one of the best ways to protect and stop all this is through awareness and education. Just that's our number one defense.
Absolutely. There was a report that came out of Canada, I think in 2016. So still North America, a little north of the border for most of us. But they did an interesting study about people that were affected by CSAM, and they went really in depth with the respondents. And they asked questions of them ranging from, how it affected you to just in your daily life, from your health, from, have you been stalked from it and all that stuff. And the responses, whoa, I thought, just wow. It's amazing.
I could feel the anxiety just reading it. I actually pulled a couple quotes from it.
Did you want to
that I
share?
found exceptionally moving. Yeah.
Mhm.
These are direct quotes from that study. So, quoting now, look at it like this: the hands-on was horrible, but at the very least, it is over and done with. The constant sharing of the abuse will never end. Therefore, the reminder of its existence will never end. If you ask me, a crime that will never end is worse than one that is over, no matter how much more serious it may appear. That this is something inescapable, that there will never be total absolution. I feel like that conveys
Wow.
a sense of helplessness, and almost hopelessness,
Absolutely.
because once something's out on the internet, how do you stop it? You can't.
Yeah.
Once it's out there, it's out there.
Yep. And they do take them down as fast as they can, but they keep getting put up with regularity. Did you have another you wanted to share, Kitty?
Yeah, I had one more. Pull it back up. They are all the same thing. Looking at pictures and videos is the same thing as physically doing it. That's what everyone doesn't understand. It's like raping us all over again and again. Every day, I know people are looking at my pictures, and there's nothing I can do to stop them.
Wow. Wow. So, this affects people in their daily lives, moving throughout their lives. And how horrible. How horrible.
Yeah.
There was a school teacher that we read about the other day who, good to hear it, Matthew, that was a teacher in a high school, very popular with his kids, and he was well known for taking his lunch with his school kids with the door closed. Not really doing anything bad, but he just liked to kind of groom them, apparently, that way.
And take pictures of them just in the classroom as well.
And they raided his house and found, I think, a little over 2,000 images of child porn. And he was sentenced yesterday, or the day before, maybe. This, I believe, was in New York, but he received, as far as they know, he never assaulted any kids, but for all this child porn or CSAM that he had with him, 3.5 years.
That's it.
3.5 years for 2,000 children as a school teacher.
Mm-hmm. And then thinking about the quotes that I just read, does that seem just, even a little bit? Yeah, when it impacts someone so much, it's, and one of the very common themes was like, it's like being assaulted over and over and over again in 3.5 years for 2,000 separate pieces of CSAM.
Yeah. Having never been victimized myself like that, like, it never occurred to me that if there is CSAM of you out there, like, imagine going to the grocery store and you catch somebody's eye, and then imagine looking away because you're afraid maybe they know, right? Like, it's heartbreaking they would do that to a child. For what?
And to constantly be scared too, like, what if one of these people viewed, your abuse, and if they recognize you, are they going to try to follow you, stalk you, hurt you all over again? That's the sense of fear is just overwhelming.
Yeah. As far as like the stalking, one of the responses in in what you had just read from, and I'm going to have to paraphrase because I didn't grab it, but it was a girl, and she said she was contacted online, I believe through Facebook, by two males, and all they said was, "You don't know us, but we know you." And just imagine, like, in the context of being a victim of the CSAM, like, well, how do they know me? Is where your brain would go. Like, I'm sure, and she was, because she had reported that was the case, but like, she was convinced that these guys had viewed this CSAM, that had her in it, and did her best to block them. But how terrifying!
Mm-hmm.
What to force someone to go through their entire life with that looming over their head is just wild.
Yeah,
I
a constant
can't
sense
even
of fear.
fathom it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But thanks for holding on, guys. I know this is tough material, but as Matthew 4 has said, he's getting mad. Hopefully you guys' temperatures are getting up too, because this is infuriating.
Yeah.
Whew, I'm mad.
Yeah.
Let's go.
I know that we sort of mentioned it before, but the numbers and the research and the statistics, they're limited by disclosure. So if not everybody is reporting what's happened to them, there's no way to keep track of it. And we know that the majority of sexual assaults, child sexual assaults, go unreported. Yeah.
Yep, we do have good research on that, and because so much of it does go unreported, it's a little nebulous. But here we go. So as far as CSA, child sexual abuse, the average age for disclosing, and this is why I said I was an early bird at 47, disclosing my CSA. Does anybody care to guess? Should we let the chat guess? What do we think?
Yeah. How old do you guys think? I mean, you kind of gave them a little hint there, babe.
Yeah, I did. But maybe they weren't paying attention. I wouldn't be paying attention to me. So what do you guys think? What's the average age for disclosing CSA?
I see 52, 59, 43.
Good guess, Krasansky. It's my kind of guess. Matt C,
40,
let's go.
45,
Cult of personality, Sugar Bean,
65.
Front Range Mama. I just like reading names. Najee, Kashwizzle, Darlene S.
You notice Najee changed her name?
I did.
Naughty eggs.
Naughty pantry. What's naughty eggs? 13.
The ones that are misbehaving.
Yeah. Well, we got someone guessed it. They guessed it dead on.
It was Barb.
It was
Barb in Florida.
Barb in Florida. If we had shirts or something, maybe we'd send it out. If we had a theme song or even artwork for us, maybe. But great job. The average age, right? Mm-hmm. The average age for disclosing is about 52 years, is what they think, which puts me early at 47. I thought the average would be much earlier than that. But it's true. People hold on to that and they carry it. It's not uncommon at all. In fact, the reports believe that, now this is a tough one, is that 86% of CSA goes undisclosed altogether.
That's 86%. A huge number.
That
especially with the numbers that we've been giving you that are already so high. And that's only what? Is that 14%? Math me.
Yeah, we've got a lot of percents in our heads, but so you might be wondering, as well as I did, like, how would they know 86% of CSA goes undisclosed? This was something I was noodling around for quite a bit, and so I decided to go check the study. So I read the study, not all of it, but the pertinent bits to it. And what I found, for those of you who are wondering, well, how would I know? That number came from a study. This was just a few years ago. And the study, it didn't have a lot of people. It was just like a couple of hundred. We do have a reference for it if someone needs it. But so basically what they'll do is either the government or a research group will gather a group of volunteers who were victims of CSA. And so they would have to, say, well, yeah, as a victim, or at least somehow get into this study. And then that 86% number is a self-reporting of the people that they were researching, so of the whole group. So in this particular research, the 86% of the people who were victims of CSA did not report, but they reported that to the researchers. So if that kind of helps you understand, and again, these numbers aren't, they're not hard and fast. That doesn't mean 86% just goes undisclosed. It means in this research, 86% did. And the theory is, maybe you can extrapolate that farther and farther, but as I said, these numbers are often difficult to pin down.
I would say, though, that pretty consistently through the studies that we looked at, it was pretty much in that range. I would say between like 75 to 90 is what they were saying between the different studies. So I'd say that's pretty darn close across the board from what they've seen. Yeah.
In this particular study, cult of personality, I'd have to look it up. 86%. Where did we get that one? No,
I think it's in the other.
Yeah. So who do they report to? It's a mix. Like a lot of groups, particularly like in the 80s and 90s, they would use like people who have been incarcerated or somehow else, in the government kind of field like that. They would use people that were hospitalized, like for whatever reason, they would tend to get them like that. And they're trying now to get kind of bigger groups to find ways to get a wider experience of people, not just ones that are either in the prison system or, hey, bank robber, good to see you, or stuff like that. They've realized a need for that. I mean, they've realized a need for a lot of research when it comes to this.
Yeah, there was one study that we looked at where they used the census, and they called houses with people that were under the age of 18. And do you remember the study that we were talking about?
I do.
And they sort of narrowed it down like bit by bit. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that one was, gosh, I think it was from like 1995.
Oh yeah, that's right. 1995. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's one of the older ones. And we do make an effort, guys, to stick with studies that are in the last decade, in the teens and 20s. So
especially because technology has changed so much since then.
Yeah. And sometimes you can't help it though. And we'll do our best to let you know if we're looking at research that's 30 or 40 years old. Yeah. So another interesting thing, go ahead, get in.
I was going to say, Matt C. had a comment that I think I just wanted to mention. Researching the signs of CSA, I think, is an important thing for parents to do, or just adults in general. And that's actually something we're going to touch more on, hopefully on a different episode. Because we have some good information on that as well.
Absolutely. And another interesting thing about studies is they don't make them easy to find sometimes. Like you can find them as long as you have $53. That seems to be the going rate for studies these days.
Per study.
So knowledge ain't always free, guys. But we have reached out to authors of studies. We utilize lots of means to get a hold of the information, and we've been successful. But I don't agree that this research should be hidden behind a paywall. That's horrifying. If you do need help, we've we've been pretty successful finding the information. Just let us know, and we'll do our best, to get you a study if you're really interested in one part of it or something. Yep, we do that, KR. We've reached out to a few, and it's not always fast, but
we're hoping for good results with that. Yeah.
Right.
So another thing worth talking about is that CSA victims, they are at an increased risk for so many other things. For instance, 50% will experience re-victimization in their life. And, just curious as to why you guys thought that might be. Like, how is it that these predators know? What makes them more at risk for that?
Yeah, it's a pretty interesting stat. Like, this stuff is wild, guys. Like I knew like my radar was up really high just from doing what I do, but to see the numbers as high as they are, it's wild. Self-esteem, Matthew 4 says.
That's a huge one. Yeah. Yep.
They're soul-sucking monsters, says Connie.
That's true too.
I think self-esteem has a lot to do with it. But there's a lot that comes along with CSA, and I think we do have some more stats further down, but a lot of issues such as depression, anxiety, like there's a whole range of things, and I don't know what mix of those things would put a child at 50% higher risk, but my goodness, man, these numbers are just horrible. Victims suffer from self-medication, alcohol abuse, self-harm, suicide. Catch them all. That is true. There is increased risk of all of those things. I've seen an increased risk of all of those things.
Yeah, they say the numbers are substance abuse about 4 times more likely to develop, which is huge. That's a huge number.
Yeah, in addition to 50% higher risk of re-victimization, in one study, CSA was the strongest predictor of the odds of being human trafficked or being a victim of human trafficking. Girls have a 2.5 times greater to be human trafficked, and then boys are
8 times more. So, which is a huge jump.
8 times. So
8
times. That's wild. In the catching that I've done with Tommy of CPP over the past couple of years, we've had a few run-ins with what I believed was trafficking, and generally when the police are collecting evidence for the cases, they're not really tearing the town apart looking for evidence, but a couple of those cases really seemed like human trafficking to me, and it was pretty intense to be in such close proximity to that kind of evil.
It's terrifying, because human traffickers don't just start out, that one time. God knows how many times they've done that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Where are we going next, Kaden? All right. So along with the increased risk of human trafficking, of re-victimization, there's increased risks. We've seen them, people have mentioned this already, but also STIs, obviously, increased risk of pregnancy. And all that stuff. I thank God every day my granddaughter is getting care and support she needs. Not everyone is that lucky. She has my love and support all day, every day. Live for my babies. That's wonderful that she has that type of support. And my heart goes out to her and to you. in the research we've looked at, and we don't have those numbers here today, but a supportive family is like one of the key things, that children seem to need to be able to recover from this.
Yeah.
And so that's
shame is a
really
huge
great to hear.
problem. Yeah, shame is a huge problem for children who have been through this, and it's really good for them to know that you love and accept them, and you're there for them, and you'll fight with them through all of this. So I'm very glad that she has you. Yeah.
So some of the long-term effects, and we're at 58 minutes, we're coming up on an hour, so we'll just pop through these quickly. But as people have mentioned in the chat, substance abuse, you're 4 times as likely to develop that. PTSD, 4 times as likely
Anxiety,
to develop.
Anxiety and panic attacks, which if you haven't had one, they're terrifying. Yep. Depression, 3 times more likely to experience a major depressive episode as an adult. And with depression comes a whole slew of other symptoms like sleeping disorders, self-harm, and then the big one, which would be suicide. Yeah, you're 3 times more likely as a child who's experienced CSA. You're more likely to have suicide attempts, 3 times more likely, excuse me. And people who have had multiple abuses are as much as 5 times higher to attempt suicide, which is an insane number of our children,
Yeah, it's horrible. Just to imagine the pain that an adult would put a child through for whatever it is that they get out of it. It's staggering to me. It has been since I've been working in this community, and it continues to be even more heartbreaking. You're absolutely right, Lullaby. How someone could do this to a child with their whole lives ahead of them, to give them
or sexual gratification.
Yeah, to give them such a hurdle and obstacle in their life is beyond me. And in my opinion, it's got to stop. That's why I do what I do. That's why Kitten does what she does. And this is why in our relationship, just moving forward, this will be, part of our lives. Seeing what can be done to stop this problem. It is atrocious that it's been allowed to get this far. It's horrifying to see the sentences that these guys are getting when they are convicted, especially when so much of it goes unreported. So we are beside ourselves with this stuff. We're mad. We're hoping you're getting mad. That's what we hope. The good news is, if you are drawn to help, there's certainly things that you can do. I've mentioned Kitten and I, for the past 2 years, we've been helping out a catching team. You can look up your local catching team, or even one across the U.S., and see what they need to help. You could throw them a cash app, if you don't have time, or if you do have time, maybe you could decoy, maybe you could help with their webpage. Anything. Help is needed at all levels, I would guess, with a lot of these catching teams. I know that depending on the time that CPV can also use help.
And another way to support them too is with your local politics. If you notice like your catching team isn't getting arrests, or even law enforcement isn't showing up, or these cases aren't being prosecuted, take a look at your local DAs, take a look at your elected officials locally, the people who are writing the laws, and the DAs who are prosecuting. They're all elected, and they like voting for them or getting familiar with their priorities or what they're running on or what they stand for or what they vote for can really make a difference because, I mean, they're politicians, so they want your vote. And, you know, let them know what your priorities are and what your expectations are for them. And
even if they don't, even if they don't care, they'll care every 2 or 4 years when it's time to vote. You know,
yeah,
that's when they get them.
Yeah.
So there's political stuff you can do. There's volunteer opportunities that you can do. RAINN, RAINN .org is a great place if catching's not your thing or politics isn't your thing. But you can volunteer for the National Sexual Assault Hotline that they run. And I believe
and that's via text too. So what they're doing is, you know, remote positions. So you would be answering like their messaging for the hotline for people who are experiencing trauma that they want to address. You would be trained and deal with it firsthand.
Yep. RAINN is a great place to volunteer, catch teams. You can involve yourself politically. And you know, a lot of these organizations like RAINN, I mean, if you had $5, I'm sure they would appreciate it. You know, they're all underfunded. We do have, I think we have a link to RAINN, and we also have some resources for parents down below in the description. You can find thorn.org there, who has some great resources for parents.
Excellent resources. Oops, sorry, baby. About talking to your kids, talking to, you know, anybody who is at that age range that could be in danger. Yeah, Thorn has a great website for that.
Yeah, and by anybody of your age, like they have it for grade school kids, it's broken out for middle school kids, for high school kids, and lots of different information on lots of different topics for all that. Butcher Baker, rewind. We'd love to have you. Rewind. Get mad with us. So thorn.org, you're going to find that down in the description down below. And also missingkids.org, which has some great resources on there as well for parents. That is the same folks that bring you NCMEC. So, you know, they got some bona fides too. So I think missingkids.org is one of the websites for NCMEC. So we got some information there too. But guys, get mad. If you do want to help out the catch team, CPP, my catch team, check us out at cppfam.com. We've got an online form you can fill out to assist. I know we have a decoy form, and check us out there too. But get mad, guys. Like, you know, if you got some spare time, throw it at that problem. Let's take care of this thing. This is ridiculous. They can't be doing this to our kids.
There's more of us than there are of them.
There's more of us than there are of them. And
pitchforks and
exactly. And I think that's why, you know, catch teams kind of started in the first place. Like there's a problem and it's not being taken care of. But the problem is our kids are getting dramatically affected by this. Every time it happens, it's one of our children, and it can't go on like this.
No, and you just got to look around outside nowadays, and you know, we have substance abuse problems. We have, you know, people who are just so anxious that they aren't functioning in life. You know, and it all plays a part.
Absolutely, guys. So we'll let you go. We do appreciate you guys hanging out with us. But yeah, get mad with us. Let's see what we can do to put an end to this problem, to knock a dent in this problem, because these are children, guys. These are children being affected for the rest of their lives. So thanks for joining us here. Kids Are Not Toys. That's right. I am Cooley McCoulson, and we got the lovely Kitten McCoulson. Kittens, you got anything else?
I think that pretty much covered it. If you guys have any ideas of what you think our next show should be, because, you know, there's so many options, unfortunately, please feel free to leave a comment.
Yep,
And
that's right.
we'll definitely look.
And we do have a couple ideas for the next one or two, but put your ideas in the comments, and we'd be happy to take a look at it. And we'll probably get a poll going too for a show that's coming up. So thank you guys for coming out. We're Kids Are Not Toys. Get mad with us. Let's do this, guys. Let's be part of the solution. Love you guys. Have a great night. Thank you.
Peace.
Peace.
Bye.
Peace. Bye.
Bye, guys.